freedom isn't the result of wealth. It's the foundation. Welcome to Wealth Independence, where freedom leads and real wealth follows through battle-tested strategies, hard-won lessons, and real-world experience. You'll discover how to accelerate your path to true financial independence. And now your hosts, Dustin Bailey and Adam Penn.
All right, welcome back to the Wealth Independence Podcast, where freedom leads and real wealth follows. I'm Dustin Bailey. And hi, Adam Penn.
Dustin, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Again, I'm really struggling with ways to introduce
me.
Yeah, I don't like saying it. Here's Adam Penn, and I don't know.
Every time that we start with me doing the intro, we all end up laughing, and then we throw it away, and you re-record.
Have you ever actually done the intro?
I mean, I've done it a few times where I've said it, but I've never recorded. But I did bring show and tell today. It's all the way up on its top, yes. But I got a painting of my dog Kelsey made for me for my birthday.
Oh, that's fantastic! You sent me this. This was a birthday gift, right?
That was a birthday gift.
For anyone that's not watching on YouTube, it's Adam's dog Asher, painted as a very dapper.
He's a Westie. He's a Scottish Highland Westie.
He's a very cute dog.
Huh?
He's a very cute dog.
Yeah, but he's dressed up in a coat there and a shotgun, I
know, he's about to go on a hunt.
Yeah,
a fox hunt. Yeah, that's a very refined, gentlemanly thing.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's pretty good. I didn't bring anything for show and tell. I'm sorry. Yeah. You kind of surprised me with this. I didn't know we were doing that.
Yeah, always happy to shock you.
Yeah, I maybe could have. Well, never mind. I'll just leave that one there.
What are we talking about today?
I don't know. I think you just recently had a conversation that you were telling me about, and I thought it would make decent content for an episode.
Yeah.
You want to dive into it? Because there's a little bit of a backstory too, right? Like the conversation that you had was precipitated by you purchasing a lot of books.
Yeah, right. So I think most people on the show know that we invest with Aspen Funds. We raise money for their deals in a fund-to-funds offering. It's one of the only fund-to-fund offering that we do. And we have a lot of trust in their company, and we've really gotten to know Bob and Ben Fraser, and they've been really good to work with. And Jim Malfuccio is one of the other partners. There's some fourth partner named Dave or something, I think, but no one's ever met him. So he apparently is very smart and a quarter owner of the company, but seriously, we've been to their corporate offices, their private homes, all that. Never met the fourth partner. So not on the podcast or anything. I digress. But anyway, Bob and Ben wrote a book, and it was called Invest Like a Billionaire. I don't think it's sitting on my shelf behind me.
I was going to ask, do you actually have a copy there? Did you give them all away?
I have a few. I gave one away to an investor this morning when I had lunch with them or breakfast with them, and I have 4 or 5 left. But yeah, we ship them out to any new investor that invests with us. So we are getting short. If we do another raise, I probably need to buy more or stop including them. I'm not sure. Anyway, so out of the gate, I bought 30 of them, and I did that because they did this little offer that if you bought 30 or more, so I only bought 30, that you could do a one-on-one portfolio review with Bob. And I talked to Bob a handful of times on our portfolio when we've been in Breckenridge and other, at his office and other times, but more loose conversations and not with the spreadsheet or anything in front of him. So I sent him my personal financial statement. I kind of filled out this form that he had, which did feel a little bit more like if someone didn't have a personal financial statement, maybe just fill in some blanks here, but filled out some of this stuff and then ended up having a call with him.
So that's first of all kind of cool that they offered this, and would encourage anyone to go back and watch our episode with Bob. Bob's got a really interesting background and a lot of stuff, and kind of his path to starting and founding. I guess he's co-founder of Aspen. Anyway, Bob's an interesting guy and kind of has a pretty deep why behind what he's doing and what sort of led to Aspen. So great guy. And so I don't know, Adam, I mean, what'd you learn? I think we're not to dive into your full portfolio review here on the thing, but just from what you were telling me about, I think there were some interesting takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, I think he brought up a few points, so maybe I'll say just the points high level. I probably should have written down before this, but go over some high level points and you can kind of just ask me what you want to dive into. The first one is that he said, I'm very heavy in real estate. And he's kind of said, well, obviously. And he said, that's not bad, but you are very concentrated. As your net worth grows and you become wealthier, which was a nice thing to hear, I'm going to become wealthier. That as it grows, to diversify a little more. And he's very big on non-correlated assets. So that's part of it. And then the second part was that I was low on liquidity. Not really a shocker. I know my own bank statements. There's, he wants, he said 10 to 20% of the net worth should be in something loosely liquid, brokerage accounts, private credit, something that has some liquidity date to it. Once again, we can dive into that. I don't know that I 100% agree with it.
I have to laugh at the fact that, I mean, those two things normally go hand in hand, right? Like, it's the joke about, like, the broke real estate investor, right? That owns millions and millions of real estate and has nothing in the bank account, right? Like, that's just that kind of fits the stereotype. And I mean, that's a downside or a positive. I think it's something to plan about if you're going to play in this space, right? Like, I've written a lot about the downside to liquidity. And I think especially a lot of people look to the stock market to try to say, well, I want to make sure my net worth is liquid. You pay a tax for that in volatility. And so there's definitely a balance to be had there. But I just have to laugh that it's like, you're heavy in real estate and light on liquidity. It's like, okay, well, that's kind of usually how that is. But that rule makes sense. I mean, 10 to 20% seems quite reasonable, because you don't want a cash drag either, right? Like, that's kind of the tax you pay on the other end. Is if you're going to hold it and don't want volatility, then you got to hold it in something that does nothing, and then now it's kind of dead money. But it serves a different purpose.
He was saying that a bond portfolio or even private credit, he was counting as liquidity, right? So a credit fund or something, which internally to me, I'm thinking credit fund, that's a 2-year lockup, or some of the ones I know are a 1-year lockup.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then I don't know, I tend to think my single family homes are more liquid than a 2-year lockup.
Yeah.
But in a down market, they might not be redeemable for the price that I think they're worth.
Sure.
So I do totally understand having the extra liquidity. Right or wrong, some of my liquidity comes from debt, right? I know that I have a list of investors I could probably call and get debt, either a second position note on a house, cross-collateralized across a few, or leverage to go do another deal. We've done some flips locally over the last year and a half, and I've done them at 100% finance, maybe 110% finance. We had one where someone wanted to roll their whole loan that they had given me from one to the next property, but it was more than I needed. So they just rolled the whole thing. I paid interest on it, but it means that I had more debt than I would need. It was actually part of the profit was even, I'd overborrowed into the profit margins on it. So
I think that's an interesting point too, is looking at availability of debt as a component of liquidity, which I don't think is a problem, right? I mean, I've used that myself, got technically a business line of credit, but secured by the house. So it's more or less like a HELOC, right? And don't tap that very often, but at the same time, it's one of those things that I know is available. The danger that I'm always aware of there is, you had a lot of people back in 2008 that had the same thought, right? And they're like, oh, well, if I'm fine to not have a lot of liquidity, because if I ever need it, I've got this line of credit over here. Then all of a sudden, the thing that the line of credit was secured by had dropped in value, and the banks were like, we don't want to extend, you're not using any of this, so we're not going to extend you this credit. Or, oh, you have the entire line out. Yeah, we need that back right now. So that's definitely a double-edged sword, but I think it's a tool in the toolbox, right? Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but I also would, who knows, I don't think we're setting up for any kind of like 2008 type scenario, but especially for anything secured by real estate, you have to know that, like, it's no guarantee that that's going to be there when you need it, especially in like a time of crisis.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's where some of the liquidity comes in, and you just got to be comfortable where you're at, right? But I think, and we don't know what the next crisis looks like, but I think there are mitigating things that can lead to needing less liquidity, right? Having fixed rate debt, having some reserves on each house, right? Like, I have a bank account for each house that we have. That way there's, on a single family home in Chico, I keep $6,000 in the account. So there's months that that number goes under $6,000 because the house was negative, maybe something needed repaired or whatever, vacancy, things of that nature. But for the most part, it's just a little bit of a buffer. So some of those items I think you can kind of break down a little more.
For sure.
But having more liquidity would always be good, especially if it's liquidity that creates cash flow. Maybe one.
Or if the liquidity comes from cash flow, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
if you have enough.
That's another aspect to it. If you know you've got cash flowing investments that are providing a certain amount every month and you're not needing that for life expenses, that's another form of liquidity.
Yeah, and that's something that I think, especially as you become wealthier and wealthier, right? This might go twofold. I have a friend who is very wealthy, making $100,000 to $200,000 a month of cash flow. Spends a decent amount of that, but I mean, not all of it by any means. So there were things where, and so let's just say this is I think this is more than they spend, but let's just say they spent 50% of it, right? That sounds different than if you made 20 grand and you spent 50% of it. Now you're spending 10 grand and you're saving 10. Okay, well, if something comes up, that other 10 grand isn't exactly going to cover. I mean, let's just say you need to buy a brand new car, right? Maybe it'll cover the payment, right? Or you buy a used car. If let's just say you need to buy a new truck, it's 120 grand for a new diesel truck. Spend 120 grand. That's a whole year of your extra cash flow.
Yeah.
Whereas when you get to those wealthier, truly wealthier numbers, and you're making an extra 100 grand a month of cash flow, it's just an extra month. Yeah. You could have extreme medical bills. You could have cars. You could have house issues. All of that, and it is something you can deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing to note on that is that some of those people, same, similar kind of group of friends I have that are on the wealthier side, have recently redeployed assets from multifamily and just real estate in general to income producing assets that are maybe a little more liquid, debt funds, things they could liquidate within 90 days, stock portfolios or bond portfolios. They like the cash flow, but they've started to pay way more tax because all of a sudden it's not a tax advantage investment. This is all interest income. So you're going to be getting taxed on this down, at the end of the year. So going from a very tax shielded investment that also has appreciation to just income producing assets. I don't know how we got off the portfolio review here, but it's part of a portfolio.
Yeah.
Those are things I think that need to be considered in liquidity. And yeah, I do tend to just think build the cash flow, not build cash flowing income that also has appreciation, right? Not just build a bond portfolio per se.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I don't. We've maybe gone a little off the path here, but I don't think this is bad. We talk a lot about portfolio construction. I mean, this is an important part, right? Like, how much of that are you like? You have to think about liquidity. Are you going to set aside? I definitely think everybody needs to have just straight up cash. Like, accept the cash drag. There needs to be some, but then you've also got the other aspects of, okay, well, there's that, got a lot of cash flowing investments, so there's a lot of extra cash coming in. And, it's going to be very individual for everybody, but that liquidity aspect is always important. I think of there's Russ Gray always told the story about when he interviewed Donald Trump way before he was running for president and asked him, what'd you learn in the good times and what'd you learn in the bad? And he said, well, I didn't really learn much in the good times, but in the bad, I learned it's good to have a little bit of cash. I think that's always true. Some people get really. Go ahead.
I wonder what a little bit of cash is for Trump.
Yeah, that's going to be that the dollar amount's going to be relative, I'm sure, but the percentage might be a little bit more consistent. But you want to be able to have that. I think it's something like people will get very hung up on the cash drag, right? And just not wanting to hold a lot of cash because it's dead money and you're losing it to inflation. But at the same time, you really don't want to end up in a situation where you're overextended and you don't have access to any liquidity and you absolutely need it. And then having to liquidate assets or assets are being liquidated on your behalf. That's never a good situation. So it's one of those things that I think it's the framing that has always resonated with me is looking at it as a insurance policy, right? Like, you're paying premiums on an insurance policy. That's an expense. Just look at, lost either opportunity cost or inflation, whatever, on that cash, as those are my insurance premiums for making sure that I've got this here in the event that we need it in a hurry. It's there. I think that's a reasonable take for most people.
Maybe switching topics briefly, but the other thing that he brought up was the to contribute more to a solo 401k.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. And you briefly told me about this. I'm kind of anxious to hear more about what he had to say, because this was not on my bingo card for stuff he would have recommended for you.
I think the biggest thing that he said about it was just that the long-term compounding benefits of, he was kind of suggesting towards the direction of Roth, which I do have some Roth money already, was that if you do Roth, then you're able to invest and, over a long compounding period, you're going to have this larger nest egg that once you hit retirement age, you're really able to actually live off of and not worry about paying the taxes on it. He was making a lot of comments just about how, as my portfolio grows, right, there are going to be long-term tax burdens, right? You're dragging 1031s for decades on end. And some of those things just won't matter as much inside of a Roth account. So if you have a Roth account, or he was saying a Roth 401k, then maybe having some of the investments in there that would maybe not be as cash flow heavy, right? Because I'm trying to still increase my cash flow personally, but have some items that are more growth oriented, right? Maybe won't pay off for 10 years, but could pay off massively. So
the idea with okay, I guess there's two pieces here, because you could have a Roth IRA, but he's specifically suggesting a 401k that's set up as a Roth, right? Which that's probably not very common, but I'm assuming you can do it. Like, I had my very first job out of school, at Deloitte, right? They offered a Roth version of their 401k. So I know this exists, but that is what he's saying, right? Is the solo 401k product, but taking the Roth option on that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Roth being so that you've essentially, it's money that you've already paid taxes on, so that it now grows tax-free. You basically
grows tax-free and can be withdrawn tax-free.
You can, once you're past the age, right?
Yeah, once you hit the retirement age, the income you take out, it always grows tax-free, right? Whether or not Roth or traditional, it's the withdrawals that are either taxed or not taxed.
Right.
You either pay the tax going in or the tax going out. And so on Roth, you pay the tax going in. On traditional, you pay the tax going out.
Okay. I'm just making sure I'm following his logic on all this, which obviously the Roth is, famous for, Peter Thiel did his initial investment, whatever, it's like $200,000 or something, and Facebook was his investment, and it, became worth billions of dollars, and that was all tax-free because it was in a Roth IRA. But explain, what was his logic with instead not doing a Roth IRA, but doing a Roth 401k? Was it for
401k? You can contribute more, right? Like, the contribution limits on a Roth, I think, are $7,000 a year, something like that.
I think so. And that phases out too with like income levels. Yeah.
With the 401k, it's $70,000. So it's 10 times more.
And that's shared across, like, if you work at a job and you've got a 401k offering or option there, that's sort of like a limit across everything that you have, right? It's not like 70 per.
Not an IRA expert, but yeah, I think so.
Okay. That was my thinking too. Okay. So then that kind of sets up an interesting scenario of how do you, if you're working a high paying W-2 job, how do you balance that, right? And I guess whether or not there's an employer match comes into that, but at the same time, the solo 401k is a self-directed option, right? You can choose the investments that go into that.
A high earning professional, maybe, and let's just say you are somehow maxing out the employee 70,000 at the company, then maybe you just do that, and when you retire, you can roll it into a solo 401k. But
or switch jobs, right? That's the thing. It's locked. You're locked into that 401k for as long as you're at that employer.
Sometimes some plans allow in-plan rollover.
They do. I don't know that I've ever actually met a real life human being that is part of one of those plans. I've heard about them, but I've never personally experienced it, because I think it's called an in-place or an in-place rollover or something like that.
I think no matter what, you can only roll over whatever your contributions were. You just can't roll over matches.
I don't know about that. We'll have to check.
Not an IRA expert. I think I heard someone at Directed say that.
Okay, I got you. Well, anyway, that's interesting, right? Like, there's I don't know. Like, you can obviously balance that and figure out how much. Like, if you are trying to max that out, then you can get more. Obviously get the match, and if you want to do that, but know that money's kind of locked up while you're at the employer. Whereas you can, take the solo option, and now you've got self-directed on that, right? So that's an interesting like puzzle piece that I personally haven't really thought about.
And for me personally, I tend to lean towards, I think that's good down the line. I do see it as a tool, but I'm 29, so I would prefer to kind of create income now and maybe slowly build that retirement tax saving tool, but not focus a lot of energy on that because I would like to increase my cash flow now that I can live off of.
Well, it's interesting. Any other big takeaways from the conversation with him? Any other deep insights that he had?
No, nothing offhand.
Well, I appreciate you sharing it. I mean, it's interesting, right? Like it's that Bob's got a lot of experience and his perspective on things is always interesting to me. So,
and I think their book is great at talking about the private alt space and different options and, how to build a diversified uncorrelated portfolio. But I do take with a grain of salt that he's at a different spot in life than I am.
Sure.
Right? I mean, he's 60 something, I think.
Yeah.
And fairly wealthy, large company, good cash flow. They're in a different spot on where their growth is at.
Yeah, for sure. Well, good deal. Well, I appreciate you sharing. I thought this is interesting, and we'll definitely link to Bob's book in the release notes for this one if you want to pick up a copy. Highly recommended. You've enjoyed what you've read so far, right?
Yeah. I'm 2/3 or so through it, but the first part of the book is really focused on just what alts are, right? I mean, I was actually at dinner with him, I don't know, a month ago or half a month ago, and he said something, and I said, that's not true. He said, have you read the book? I was like, oh, I haven't finished it. The first section, if you're a very experienced investor, is a lot of just things you already know. And a lot of detail on stuff. So I kind of glanced over some. Once he told me there was more that went on past that, I kind of just skimmed through those sections and then it moved on to the other stuff, which is actually very good.
Good. Well, yeah, we'll definitely drop a link and we would encourage everyone to pick up a copy for sure. Any other parting thoughts, Adam?
No, sir.
Well, good deal. Everybody, we appreciate you listening. As always, thank you so much. Go, if you like this, enjoy this, go give us I got to remember all the things. Give us a like on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast, and whatever the heck you do on Spotify. I have no idea, but do it there. Let the computers know you're enjoying this, and we'll get the message out to more people. But we, as always, appreciate you listening. We'll catch you on the next episode. Just remember, where freedom leads, real wealth follows. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for joining us on Wealth Independence. This show is for informational purposes only and is not financial, investment, legal, or tax advice and does not constitute an offer to buy or sell securities. All investments carry risk, and investors should always conduct thorough due diligence and consult with qualified professionals before investing. Until next time, remember, freedom leads and real wealth follows.